I go where? In our world, in a lot of our upbringing too, our earlier years, it was, I go everywhere else but inside to find my God, right? Go to church, go to the priest, go to the minister, go to the rabbi, go to the rule book. I love this. Go inside to find my God. I needed that because I had one of those weeks. Here's how someone described it. Deciding everything's falling into place perfectly as long as you don't get too picky about what you mean by place or perfectly. Ever had one of those weeks? How wonderful then to realize, as Jay's saying, there's one place to go to center and sort it out. Our theme today, our title is Come Home to Spirit. And in our declaration, there's that line, or there are a few lines at the end that say, here you can find a personal relationship with the God of your understanding, and we're here to discover what we already know. That's it. That is Spirit within. Personal, unique to you and me, and something we've always known. We already know this. But we do need reminders because things outside get so distracting. At least I need reminders. But we're talking about that which is ultimately infinite and wordless and nameless and formless. So it's kind of challenging to talk about something with words when what we're referring to is that which is beyond all form. But we have it in us. And Emily Cady, who was a Unity teacher and also a homeopathic physician back in the 1880s, and a very beautifully spiritual woman, and she said, there is nothing the human heart longs for as to know God. There is nothing the human heart so longs for as to know God, as to know Spirit within. And that's longing, Spirit within, that something, that longing is something we often don't recognize, or we may get, here's what happened to me and maybe to a lot of people, it gets lost in the dogma of religion. That spiritual longing gets lost in the dogma of religion, no matter what. It's not intended by the various religions, but it happens. Now, you know the difference between religion and spirituality. There are a lot of definitions of the contrast floating around, but I kind of like this one because, well, it speaks to our creek here, because religion is a person sitting in a church and thinking about kayaking, and spirituality is a person sitting in a kayak thinking about God. So how do I talk about that which is beyond words, that which is beyond form? It's a little bit like the Neanderthal pointing and grunting and trying to explain, but I'd like you to keep in mind that as we're doing our best as in our human way of communicating with words, that my intention is that these words invite you to an experience. An experience. You know what it's like to have an experience, sometimes that's way beyond words. Well, Spirit within is there as an always new experience for each one of us. It's way beyond description. We will use words to sort of describe it, but still it's beyond that, I feel. For me, anyway, I'll just say for me. It is I want to invite you to this experience of coming home to Spirit within. And of course, most of you are saying, well, I kind of know what you're talking about, Karen. That's familiar to me. So then let's take a deeper dive and let's say, all right, I'm wanting to invite you and myself always to a deeper experience or a different experience of going home to Spirit within. As I said, well, first of all, it's a lifelong thing, so that's why we can, the many layers. We never get to the end of it, thank goodness. And I said it is unique to all of us. It is available, obviously, to all of us. We're born with this inner awareness. And yet each one of us has an experience of spirit unique to us. I equate it to fingers and fingerprints. We all have fingers, but we each have a unique fingerprint. And I cannot emphasize that enough. I really want you to know the freedom and the richness of going home to that inner sense of spirit that is yours, by whatever you want to call it. The mystic Meister Eckhart said, "The eye with which I see God is the eye with which God sees me." Another way of saying it's yours. And it changes all through life, too. Thank goodness we're talking about something infinite that is not limited by where we are at any given point, and yet it is available wherever we are at any given point. So this is an invitation, as the whole month has been the theme of Come Home to Love. Come Home to Love. And Dr. Ernest Holmes, the architect of our teaching, wrote a piece, I believe it's in our textbook, and it's an invitation. I love it, and I've read it for many, many years myself, but what I'd like you to do is listen to it as though it were an invitation from Spirit to you. And here's what he says. "Peace be unto you, traveler. Enter and be not afraid. I have left the gate open, and you are welcome to my home. There's room in my house for all. I have swept the hearth and lighted the fire. The room is warm and cheerful, and you will find comfort and rest within. The table is laid, and the fruits of life are spread before thee. The wine is here also, and it sparkles in the light. I have set a chair for you where the sunbeams dance through the shade. So sit and rest and refresh your soul. Eat of the fruit and drink of the wine. All is yours, and you are welcome. Welcome home." I read that as welcome home to Spirit. That is just one way of articulating that incredible, loving openness for us. Finding Spirit within, connecting with that is not meant to be a daunting struggle, but I think a lot of us, again, we're taught or trained or conditioned or something that, it's kind of a big, rough, difficult deal. But it's rather like coming home to that which is familiar and which is reassuring. Ernest Holmes said it this way. He said, "Spiritual evolution should make the infinite, not more distant, but more intimate." I think Science of Mind is such a powerful, wonderful teaching. Many, many principles that we learn, and so many things we learn about how we can change our thinking and change our life. And often that's a challenge. And I think we get thinking that therefore any deeper experience of Spirit is going to also be hard, challenging, difficult. But the truth is, as he said, it shouldn't be that, and it shouldn't seem like it's way out there, distant from us. It should be more intimate. And why is that? Well, I take the words from the psychologist Carl Jung, who said, "Called or not, God is present." Called or not, God is present. So if we know that, it shouldn't be such a difficult thing. It's here. I love to read other teachers from other traditions. And one of them is Father Richard Rohr, and I think many of you are familiar with his writings. He is a Franciscan priest and an author and speaker, and very progressive and brilliant and inspiring. And here's how he wrote about this. He said, "In very real ways, soul, consciousness, love, and spirit are one and the same. Each of these points to something that is larger than the individual, is everywhere present, eternal, and then revealed through us." So it isn't just hanging out there. He the end of the sentence says, and yes, and it's revealed through each one of us. He says, each manifestation expresses God's endless desire to create new forms of externalized love. Now, that is not unlike a lot of what we have learned through our teachings of Science of Mind through Ernest Holmes and New Thought. I love the way he expressed it, though, and especially that last part. That each manifestation expresses God, that means every way that things show up in form expresses God's endless desire to create forms of externalized love. So the theme is this month is, of course, Come Home to Love, and today, Come Home to Spirit. And the point of it is that it is when we do that, then we experience how it radiates out from us. God's, that impulse to create new forms always of externalized love. Dr. Michael Beckwith of the Agape Center in California said it this way. He said, you are God's delivery system of love. Externalized love. You are the delivery system. So think about it that way. Anytime, whatever your daily activities and your conversations and impulses and all of that, think, what is my unique delivery system of God's love? So I talked about the fact that we know that this is within us, but sometimes we feel like, where did it go? My colleague, Dr. Chris Michaels, wrote something in one of his books in this way. He said, in time, we all find our way home to spirit within, because the Creator placed a homing device within us. What is that homing device? He said, our intense desire to give and receive love is that homing device, and it will always lead us directly back to our Creator, the one and only source of unconditional love. It's like a homing device, love, that impulse for externalizing love. Now, sometimes it helps when we're talking about God's Spirit, that which is infinite and beyond words and beyond description, to maybe use different words to describe it. Sometimes that opens up our understanding, because the usual words, again, like God, even Spirit, can have a little bit of baggage, and we can kind of take a detour and kind of miss the beauty and the richness of that essence that is within us. And so again, back to Father Richard Rohr. He wrote, he had a whole list of names for it, but one that I really liked that he called it was implanted hope. Implanted hope. Think about it. Now, we're all about affirmations, I know. We say, don't hope, just know. I do believe, though, that hope is an on-ramp to knowing. But here's the other part of that. I used to get so annoyed. When I read that, I thought, implanted hope, and I thought, oh, yeah, I remember. And it still happens many times when I would be upset about something, in my story, and just wanting to throw in the towel and just say, oh, I'm over it. And there'd be this little spark inside me that would say, well, maybe there's another way. Maybe there's an answer. Maybe tomorrow's a better day. That was that implanted hope. That was God in me. That was Spirit saying, come on, there's another iteration here. Have you ever had that happen? I mean, let me describe it this way. You're not done feeling sorry for yourself. Yeah. Or not done being angry at somebody or something. Wait a minute, I'm not done with that yet. I don't want to see a brighter, but it nudges me. That's that implanted hope. That's just one example of recognizing Spirit within. And he writes about this. He says, one thing we love so much about young children, I don't know why I think my ear must have moved today because it's just not hanging on here. All right, there we go. He said, one thing we love so much about children is their indomitable hope, curiosity, and their desire to grow. They fall down and then soon they're all grins again, but all too often by the time they're 60, they don't smile so much anymore. And we ask what happened between 6 and 60. And he said, I see it as a loss of the awareness of spirit, because conversely, if we trust that spirit is alive within us, we will keep on despite every setback. You say, I don't know what that spirit in me is. And I mentioned it's that implanted hope. It's that something that says, I'm going to get up another day and I'm going to give it another try. It's that always moving ahead despite the setbacks. So that's one name for spirit within, implanted hope. And another is surprise. Have you ever heard it said that another name for God is surprise? And when you think of it that way, it's kind of, I can do that. Let's bring it on today. Let me see what the surprises are, and know that that is part of that impulse, because it's always creating. That's its nature, always creating and evolving within you as you. And so a lot of times it's a surprise, and we don't always think to say, oh, that's a God moment. Well, sometimes we do, but sometimes we miss them. God, another name for God is surprise. Take that with you this week. And if you want to email me about any results of that, let me know. I'd love to hear about what surprises have dropped into your lap as a result of thinking about spirit within as simply surprise. Another brilliant writer, thinker, who talked about the process of recognizing spirit within, referred to it as wonder. Ken Wilber, who has been called the Einstein of consciousness, or consciousness studies, the Einstein of consciousness studies. He's a brilliant psychologist, philosopher, author. And, you would think you would get a really convoluted, long definition from him. And here's what he said about this attempt to find this spirit, this indefinable something. He said, in an attempt to discover the radiant spirit at work, even in our apparently God-forsaken times, where is God? There might be an answer to this after all, for wonder continues to bubble up. And we all know how to wonder, which speaks in the tongues of that spirit within and inexplicably points home. Wonder. Again, when I think back to my earlier tradition, I was definitely not encouraged to wonder. That was / code for doubt, and that was just not on the table. And yet, that very impulse, and something in me way back as a teenager recognized, I thought, wait a minute, there's something in there that wondering, I'm not trying to be a heretic or rebellious. There's something that wants to know more. It's that spirit within. So don't discount when you sit and wonder sometimes. That's that nudge from within. And then another Jesuit priest named Richard Hauser, he wrote this. He said, our effort is not a self-conscious striving to incorporate pious virtues and practices into our life, but it's more getting out of the way and allowing spirit to transform all of our activities. Again, let's all just declare our freedom from having to be good girls and boys and do all the right things. In order so we can experience spirit within, let's instead get out of the way. Get out of the way. And he said, if we do this, and as we do this, spirit will do the rest and will never abandon us. Will never abandon us. Get out of the way. How do you get out of the way? That's a whole other talk. But some thoughts are, for example, as we just did our moment of quietness, stillness. Allow ourselves to wonder. Allow ourselves to be surprised. Don't try to pre-think what it's going to be like. That's getting out of the way. And so Dr. Ernest Holmes again says, your endeavor then is not so much to find spirit, it is to realize its presence. That's another way of saying I'm getting out of the way. Not to find it, but to realize its presence and to understand that this presence is always, always, always with you. He said in his own experience, he said, consciously I draw close to my divine center, the source of all that is, and I feel the warmth of its presence. The divine is always present and appears wherever recognized. I've referred some to my earlier religious upbringing and tradition, which was Pentecostal, which was very, very strict fundamentalist. And of course, it's been a long journey from there to where I am now. But here's the thing. I am so grateful for the emphasis at that time in the Pentecostal tradition of experience, of experiencing God, experiencing Spirit, experiencing it far more. It was not an intellectual exercise, it was feeling the Spirit. And then when through my growing up and my wondering and my questioning, of course my journey went way, 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 way far away from that. And then I found this marvelous teaching of science of mind, of new thought, and it was so much more open, and it resonated with me. And the best part was, after I'd been attending for a while, back in Atlanta I started to realize that sense of experience had never gone away. It was there, kind of like those birthday candles that you can't ever blow out. And so as I was finding my way back to a spiritual practice and tradition, which was more in my head, I started to remember, not only just to feel, but to remember that familiar sense of God in my life, by whatever name, and I don't care what I call it. I'm not attached anymore to what I call it. It's that something. It's just so rich. And so I share that with you because, believe me, if it didn't go away from me from the path I went on, and believe me, that you're never going to hear about, all the details, I mean, but if that inner stuff didn't go away, for me, it's certainly not going away for you either. It's in there. It's in there, that sense of something greater. Surprise, of wonder, of home, There's a poet who said it this way in describing, again, presence. The arms of the mother are around you, and all you need to do is put your head on her shoulder. The arms of the mother are around you always, and all you need to do is put your head on her shoulder. It's that simple, and it reminded me of a song that I had learned at a retreat I was at some years ago, a spiritual retreat. I need to be still and let God love me. There's this tendency, again, to say, I need to love God, which ain't all bad. Nothing wrong with that. But that can seem kind of, that's kind of huge. I'm having problems here. I don't know if I can get around to loving whatever that is. But to let God love me, I need to be still and let God love me. There's another line in it that says, and when this old world seems to push and shove me, I need to be still and let God love me. Keep that in mind this week, you know? It's such a relief. So why do we talk about going home to spirit, that's something within? Well, I don't mean to be flip, but it is one-stop shopping. It really is. Remember when we used to, now Amazon's probably one-stop shopping anymore. But it is the place to go for whatever we need. It's the source. Jesus, the great master teacher, talked about, and he always used metaphors. He said, I want you to eat of the bread of life, and you will never hunger again. Everything else outside, only satisfies for a little while. And there's a lot of terrific stuff out there. I love my life and all the offerings that are available. But there's always, kind of, okay, what's the next thing? What's the little more? Let's have a little difference. The bread of life, that inner connection with Spirit, you never hunger again. He talked about the water that you drink, of water of Spirit, you never thirst again. He was talking about being in touch with that inner Spirit. And so when we know that, then we can do this kind of a prayer. And you've heard me say this many times, and I'll bet you many of you do this now. Well, all right, I don't know what to do, but something in me does. I'm feeling afraid, but something in me is not afraid. I'm feeling confused, but something in me is not confused at all, is at peace. It's a way of acknowledging, as I said, the one-stop shopping, whatever I need. I don't know how to get there, but something in me knows. How terrific to be able to affirm that, to acknowledge our humanness, and yet be able to say, but there's that something that never leaves me, that's always there, and it knows it is the source of whatever I need. And when I do that, I may still be in the I don't know, or I'm still feeling all kerfluffled. But the point is, I have affirmed that something inside, and I made an opening for it to start making a way for me, start showing me the way as I take one step at a time. I get out of the way, let God love me. And when we talk about getting out of the way, we talk also about being still, about stillness. I read something so beautiful this week by a woman from probably 100 years ago. Her name is Eva Werber Bell. And she has a little book called Quiet Talks with the Master. It's a lot of spiritual insights. And so she talks about being still. And she said, it's not like any stillness you have ever known before. And see, this is the stillness of getting out of the way of what wants to show up, of being in touch with Spirit. It's not like any stillness you have ever known before. She said the stillness, it's like the stillness which lies at the bottom of the ocean, which is eternally quiet and yet eternally vibrant and alive with infinite activity. Retreat to this stillness at any moment, whenever any confusion rises in your physical or mental world. Thus shall all difficulties solve themselves by Spirit's power working through you. Learn to be still instantly and watch Spirit's power work. In other words, being still is not being vacant, not being empty, not being out of touch. It's like the bottom of the ocean, the water at the bottom of the ocean, which is just teeming with life. It's like being in touch with that which is always creating, always finding new ways of externalized love, of showing up. I love that, because sometimes stillness can seem like, well, wait a minute, I feel like I ought to be doing something. Well, here's the thing. When we are still and recognize it as she described it, we're just getting out of the way and letting God do it, letting Spirit do it. And so, this is a lot about us going within, going home to Spirit. And not only is it for our own well-being, but it is for those around us, well-being of those around us. First of all, it inevitably does bless those around us. When we are, the more centered, have you ever noticed, the more centered you are in that spiritual awareness within, the more you are guided to either say nothing or do nothing, or say something or do something, but it's always, it's divinely guided, and it blesses people around you. And what happens is you are being an instrument of Spirit. When we tend to that getting centered within ourselves, it's not a one-way street. It comes through us, and it truly does bless those around us. Again, Father Richard Rohr said it, when Spirit is alive in people, they wake up from their mechanical thinking and they enter into the realm of co-creative power. Each manifestation, in other words, each act, each word, expresses God's endless desire to create those new forms of externalized love. And so this is really about, as Mother Teresa said, let your life be a pencil in God's hand. She saw herself as an instrument of Spirit, and I love that. My life is a pencil in God's hand. And it's so natural. Here's a simple little way it was framed by someone. It said, once there was a girl and a boy who wanted to change the world. And at first they thought it would be easy because if everyone could see how beautiful it would be, well, it'd only take about a minute. But all the people they talked to were too busy to stop and listen. So they went off and they did beautiful things all on their own. And pretty soon people were stopping and asking if they could come along and do that too. And that's how they figured out how the world can change. Being an instrument, right where you are, and being in touch with that compass that always shows you and me whether to say something or not, whether to do something or not. Emma Curtis Hopkins, the great, wonderful early teacher of teachers in Science of Mind and New Thought, gave us an affirmation for starting the day. It is this, that God works through me to will and to do that which ought to be done by me. God does it. God works through me to will and to do that which ought to be done by me. And she says, such an affirmation makes you realize that you have nothing whatsoever to do. You are the instrument. And she said, God does all things perfectly and easily with you, through you, by you, and for you. That is being used by Spirit in the most exquisite way. And so now, to wrap this up, our beloved Jay, you can start making your way up here, sweetie, is going to be singing for us that wonderful song, Use Me, Use Me. And as you come home to Spirit, let me reiterate, you cannot help but be used, because that's what it does. Namaste. Thank you. Thank you.